It was. It's funny now. What did you order? Roasted chicken, which was pesto chicken. But they switched it. And then Wagyu BLT with a club. I think you did too. Can we check and see what Julian favorite ordered?
Sorry. It seems like it was so long ago.
I was gonna say, how are you supposed to know what you had for lunch a week ago?
Is this on?
Yes.
We're gonna get started in just a few minutes.
You did great.
Okay, what's wrong, Annie?
We don't have name tags, but I've got BLT over here. I have club over here. Roasted chicken, which was pesto chicken, is over here. Okay. BLT is here.
Hi.
I am a
What did you
pesto chicken.
That changed to roasted chicken.
Roasted chicken.
Yep.
Okay, I'm okay.
They get a chicken, don't they? Yeah. So y'all just find your seats. We'll get started in just a couple minutes.
Do you know what you
Wait, have you? Sure.
Okay, so that's gonna be all at this table. You can take a seat anywhere at this table.
Because y'all have the pesto.
Well, yeah, we had to change it to roasted.
I felt like I was.
But that's somebody. And this is BLT. And then this is yeah.
I know one of the very places you're dark hair.
And then I can turn, of course, they see it.
Yes, we just did that only today. This is good too. You should know that you got it. Yes. Okay.
All right. I'm gonna give you more.
I know we're a big group today, but I don't know. No, we should be fine. Okay, good. We're gonna give it a couple more minutes just to see some other folks.
I think whatever one you grab.
Yes, that's right. Take for grab one and bucket.
Yes, and then 90.
Is it Bridget?
I'm so sad. Hello.
You was so good to see you too.
Got them all covered.
She was kind of arranged by.
You're not always a party.
That's true. You are very welcome.
Are they the same?
No.
This was switch. You want to switch up? All right, we're going to go ahead and get started just because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Thank you for coming to our winter literary luncheon. We're a tight group today because we have so many people here, which is fantastic. So give yourself some elbow room because you're going to want to take notes, I think. So you should have lunch from Grassroots in front of you. We want to thank them for helping us with this event. There are cookies at your table. Those are for you. Please do eat them. We will eat them if you eat them. And then, yeah, we're just so grateful you're here to kind of get started the new year. We are, I was like, no, you're totally fine. We are also broadcasting to about 20 folks all over the country, which is really fun. So they have purchased tickets to get to hear this either live or later at their desks. But I think it'll just be fun to get started and talk about what's coming up this winter. So there are several books coming out today, but before I get started, I wanted to talk to you about reading challenges. So these are popular, especially if you are kind of in the Bookstagram world, or maybe if you have a really active book club. You will see Book Riot does one of these. I think Modern Mrs. Darcy and Vocal puts out one of these. It's a reading challenge. It's designed to help you read maybe more differently than you're used to. We did one last year. Kate, one of our staffers, came up with some books that she thought would be good for everybody to read, or categories she thought would be good for everybody to read by. So we did one for 2019, but we kept it really simple because I start to think that reading challenges get really overwhelming and there are too many to choose from. So I just wanted to walk you through the bookstore 2019 reading challenge. So done by the bookshelf. So these are posted on our Instagram, but I'm also going to send them out in an email to you, so don't worry. The first one is a seasonal read. So a book that has to do maybe around Halloween, you read something a little more thriller, or maybe right now you read something cozy. So it doesn't matter what season, but I recommend reading with the season. Another category is a classic novel that you missed in school. So we talk all the time about at the bookshelf about books we just missed. Like maybe my school gave a certain list, but for example, one that I've never read and the one I'm going to read this year is Lord of the Flies. I never read it. It kind of missed me, and so I would like to read that this year. So that's going to kind of fill my reading goal. Another section and another book genre that I really think we don't read a lot of, or we read but then we stop halfway through because we think we've done enough, personal growth. So I got When Harry Met Sally, that famous scene where he's like, somebody's looking at you from personal growth. So a book that maybe will help you grow your business, if you're maybe in my case, a book that'll help you maybe Marie Kondo, her new book, that would be, or her book that came out a couple years ago, maybe you've watched the show, that's personal growth to me. That's something that's helping you develop and maybe do something you hadn't done before. So personal growth is the third category. The fourth, I think, is really important, especially right now, Southern Lit, but by a person of color. So not just your typical Southern Lit, which I think many of us like, many of us enjoy maybe the help, but maybe it's time to read something by a person of color and diversify our reading a little bit. The second, another category, and this one's hard for me to pronounce, an epistolary novel. So a book, maybe it's like Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. I hate that title so much. Cute book, but I hate that title. But that is a book written in letter format. So another one I really liked that was underrated, and I think it is still in print, is called Frances and Bernard. I love it because it's based on Flannery O'Connor and her real life friendship with, and I cannot remember his name. Flannery is the only one who's important to me. So, but it's kind of fictional, utilizing letters. Another one that I love that would count for this, I think, was Hey Ladies, which was really fun about planning a bridal shower back and forth. And so there's lots of texts and emails. Attachments by Rainbow Rowell would also fit in this category. So a book that's told entirely through correspondence. An unread title from your own bookshelves. So you know at your house you've got books that you have not read. I saw somebody, and I nearly fell on my chair, although no judgment if this is you. This woman said, I'm going to read from my unread shelves this year, maybe books she bought but hadn't read yet. I've got about 600. 600 unread books I cannot, I think my number is high, but I don't think it's that high. So read something that you bought, but maybe you put on the back burner. I think we've all been there. I frequently buy books when I'm in independent bookstores, like on vacation. And unless I read them on that vacation, I kind of get home and forget about them because my at-home reading list is so large. So kind of take some time and explore your shelves and see what an unread title from your own shelves might be. A book based on a new movie or TV show. I, for example, am really intrigued. I did not know the show Killing Eve, which was really popular on BBC, is actually a book series. And so I am very intrigued by that and might be trying one of those this year. So a book based on a new movie or TV show. You could even go the classics route. If Beale Street Could Talk is, I think, going to be an Oscar-nominated film. And the book by James Baldwin has been out. So that would be a good one as well. And the last category is my personal favorite because I think you could probably find a wide range of literature that fits in this category. Subject of a childhood obsession. So I, as a kid, was obsessed with Anna Anastasia and the Romanoff family, but I guarantee you most of that came from the cartoon. And then from the Dear America books, I don't know if you're familiar with those. Those were great little kind of diary books that came out, the children's chapter books. I think they still exist today. But it reminded me, as an adult, maybe I should actually read about the real Romanovs, and maybe I should really understand what was really going on and not just the cartoon version. So think of something, maybe you were obsessed with horses as a kid, and maybe it's time to read, what was that popular? A Seabiscuit. Maybe it's time to read something like that. I just think, delve deeply, think back onto your childhood. I know if you were like me, you had something you were obsessed with or intrigued by, and then find something that fits in that category. I think that one's really fun and a little bit different. So those are our categories. I don't even think we did 10 this year. We just wanted to kind of inspire people to read a little bit differently. So this isn't a top 10 list. This isn't really even a list you can check off, but it is a list you can kind of fill out throughout the year. And if you're ever in a reading slump, if you're ever like, oh, I don't know what to read next, maybe use this list to guide you or to inspire your reading. So that's our 2019 reading challenge. Okay, on to some new books. And please feel free to eat while I'm doing this. You're allowed to eat. Okay, I wanted to start with some books coming out today. So you are in luck because today is a really good release day. Tuesdays are new release Tuesdays at the bookshelf and at bookstores everywhere. Today, my favorite book so far of the year is out. It is called The Dreamers, and it is by Karen Thompson Walker. If you are not familiar with Karen Thompson Walker, she wrote the book Age of Miracles, which I read several years ago, I think before I really was bookshelf adjacent. And I loved that book because it was the first time I read what might be described as a post-apocalyptic novel, but it didn't feel post-apocalyptic. And I don't know how else to say this except if you have read Station 11, you know what I'm talking about. Station 11 is a book that takes place after an apocalypse, after this kind of disaster has occurred. But the book isn't about that at all. What it's about is music and art and culture and relationships. So Karen Thompson Walker does the same thing really well in Age of Miracles. Her new book is called The Dreamers. And I always hate to describe books this way because I feel like it will turn some people off. Please don't let this turn you off. It is kind of post-apocalyptic in that it takes place in a tiny college town in California. Some students on a college campus fall asleep and they don't wake up, but they're not dead. They're just asleep. Like you can see their REM cycle, like you can see their eyes moving. They're asleep and they're dreaming, but they are not dead. And so this kind of panic fills this college campus, fills this small town. I am so intrigued by what this author did because in this small town, the government kind of winds up quarantining the city. And so I loved kind of some flashbacks that mentioned the Japanese internment camps. So she kind of references those a little bit. So I think she's done such a good job of weaving this really compelling story. You want to know what happened to these kids. You want to know what happened on this college campus. But it's also about the relationships in the small town. So don't let kind of this fantastical element sway you. I feel like sometimes readers are like, I don't want that. But you can read this and enjoy the relationships and the familial atmosphere. Welcome. So The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker is out today. And it's my favorite book so far. I mean, it's early in the year, obviously, but I love this book. Okay. The next one I wanted to talk to you about, did anybody here read The Perfect Nanny? Did anybody read that? Okay, so I read The Perfect Nanny. I was not going to, but I did because it made the New York Times top 10 books of 2018. And it was a paperback original, translated from the French. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to give this a try. This is a hot take. I'm not sure it was deserving of the top 10 of 2018 for the New York Times. But admittedly, just like The Dreamers is more than post-apocalyptic or fantasy literature. I will say that The Perfect Nanny is more than just a thriller or a suspense. Although I love a good thriller or suspense novel, The Perfect Nanny has a lot to say about class dynamics. Obviously, the protagonist in the book, or antagonist, as the case might be, is a nanny who, as you might guess, is less than perfect and does some truly horrible, horrible things. But we also get a glimpse of what her life is like and what class system she finds herself in. The author of that book has written a new book called Adele. It comes out, I believe, today. It releases today as well. I think because of the popularity of The Perfect Nanny, this is the book that you will probably be hearing about, meaning you might hear about it on the Today Show. It's going to kind of make the talk show rounds, I think, if I had to guess, just because of the popularity and the critical acclaim to The Perfect Nanny. I will say Adele looks to be a little bit racier, so use your judgment. I want to make sure, I feel like I've made this mistake before, so let me be clear. I think it is PG-13 to R, but I think it's going to get your book club talking. So if you are looking for a book club, the reason I recommend this for a book club is it's paperback original. So I think this one, between the hype it might get on the national talk shows and then the subject matter, it's kind of a young wife and maybe some terrible decisions she makes because of some things she likes to do. And I think this one might be for you. So it's called Adele. Okay, I'm going to skip to another one called Joy Enough. I have this one. This is The Dreamers, by the way. So this is out today. And then Adele is also out today. And those are fiction. Here is one of my nonfiction favorites. It's called Joy Enough. This is a memoir, and I feel like sometimes my mom, for example, is like, oh, memoirs, they're all the same. And they do sometimes feel all the same. But I adored this book. Sarah Mickle, if I had to guess, I think she's probably in her 30s. This is about kind of the loss of her mom. It's not maybe a brief memoir like Joan Didion or like When Breath Becomes Air. It's more about finding your identity when you're so close to your parent. So Sarah is extremely close to her mother, respects her, loves her, has tried to emulate her, and now she's not there. And she's trying to figure out who she is and what she is. And so I adored this book. It's very poetic. If you read, which if you didn't, this is a great book, Goodbye Vitamin, which is fiction. If you read Goodbye Vitamin, you will like Joy Enough. Goodbye Vitamin is a fiction book, but about a daughter who is taking care of her father, kind of on his deathbed or in his last months. Just how this is written is so beautiful. Even if you don't wind up buying this or reading this, I think you should at least read an excerpt of it. It's really beautiful and well done. So this is out today. It's called Joy Enough. Okay, so those are the books that are out today. In a couple of weeks, there is a book coming out called Leading Men. It's on your pamphlet. It's that third one at the bottom. This is a book that I am reading right now. I think about 50 to 100 pages left. I wanted to read this because it is historical fiction, or historic fiction, based on the life of Tennessee Williams. But it's not really about his whole life and upbringing. It's really about Tennessee Williams and his relationship with somebody named Frank Court. I went and saw Tennessee Williams' home place this past summer, and so I was really intrigued. I didn't know very much about him at all. It was just kind of on this Southern literary tour my husband and I were doing. And so we stopped at this museum, which was super quirky and odd, which is fitting of Tennessee Williams. But I did not know a lot about him, so that's kind of why this one made my list. I'm reading it right now. It is a slow burn, but if you liked Tangerine, or if you liked a book I loved called The Arrangement, there are two books called The Arrangement. One of them is about an open marriage. That is not what I'm talking about. The Arrangement that is about the food writer Emma K. Fisher. So The Arrangement and Tangerine, kind of, if you married those two books together, would form Leading Men. Even if you're not intrigued by Tennessee Williams, I think you might like this because of the rich setting. So they are kind of on vacation in 1950s Italy. And so if you have been to Italy, or if you are looking for a book like Beautiful Ruins that kind of sweeps you away, this one will do that. I will admit that this is a slower title, but I am loving the beauty of it, and I'm very intrigued with where it's going. And it's based in real factual events. So it's not just about Tennessee Williams and his relationship with this man who was kind of his assistant. It's also about their discovery of a young actress. And apparently she was a famous film actress in the 50s. So I think if any of that is intriguing to you, if you like history, or if you have read Tennessee Williams' plays and kind of want to see what he was like, Leading Men would be a good one for you. Okay, another one I'm super excited about, I have not read it yet, but it is on my list, is The Care and Feeding of Ravenously Hungry Girls. The reason I'm intrigued by this is because the author is from the South. It is also supposed to be a mixture of the mothers, which you know I love. If you didn't read it, please go back and read that backlist title. And then An American Marriage, which you're probably familiar with after Oprah picked it as her book club book last year. So The Care and Feeding of Ravenously Hungry Girls is about these 3 sisters, and they're very close-knit. They kind of live in tight community with one another, and one of the sisters and her husband are found guilty of a crime, and they're taken to prison. And so these 2 sisters have to kind of cope and figure out what to do now that their almost substitute matriarch is in prison. So the eldest sister has been taken, and so they're kind of trying to figure out how to hold the family together. This is at the top of my reading list. As soon as I can finish Leading Men, I think I'll be picking this one up. It is out February 19th. And Leading Men, if you're keeping track, is out February 12th. Okay. The last one kind of on your card is called The Wall. It's by John Lanchester. Here's why I picked this one. I think, again, this one is going to get a lot of buzz. If you liked Exit West, think kind of along those lines. John Lanchester has envisioned a world in which an island nation is bordered by a concrete wall. And so obviously this is going to err on the side of political, but almost, I guess, fantasy, kind of an imaginative world. Exit West I love because it was about immigration and maybe the immigration crisis, but he did it in a way that felt, because it was steeped in fiction and kind of this almost sci-fi element. And I know, don't tune it out just because sci-fi. But like, I think Exit West was able to get away with some things because it took that tone. I think The Wall is going to be the same way. So I think this year, we've already started to see it last year, but I think we're going to start to see some literature reflective of the times, meaning some authors have had time now to do some research and put some things down on paper. And I think The Wall is a great example of that. This is one I think you'll be hearing about a lot. It is out on March 5th. I wanted to kind of pick, I always try to do at least one nonfiction, maybe more historical book. And so In the Shadow of Statues by Mitch Landrieu. This one you might have heard of because it is already out in hardback, but it releases in paperback this spring. And I think they're trying to push it. I think it's going to have a new kind of intro. But he is the author, and he's an author obviously, but he's the former mayor of New Orleans. And so he has a lot to say, and I think he actually has lived it, so I think we should listen to him maybe. Maybe he's a voice worth paying attention to. All about Confederate monuments and what is the purpose of Confederate monuments and where do they have a place in our history. And as Southerners, I think we should at least be availing ourselves of these things and at least trying to figure out, what do people say? What do people think? What is a man who's had to lead a city through this? What did he do? What is his opinion? What I love about this book, at least what I've read, is that it's historic. So it's steeped in like of the moment events, so current events, historic. It talks about the history of the South, the history of New Orleans, but it's also memoir. So you're getting some of Mitch's growing up and his experiences and the role that that city played in his life. So In the Shadow of Statues. Also, we're always talking to customers about books to read before you go to a place or when you come home from a place. So if you have a trip to New Orleans planned this year, I think this would be a really good one worth reading. Okay, so those are some of the titles on my card. These are kind of the ones I thought, if you had to walk out of here with some top recommendations, these would be them.
When was that?
It comes out here at March 19th. Yeah, does anybody have any questions about these before I move on to some others that made my list, but they didn't make this, they didn't make the printed sheet? Any questions about these? Okay. All right, so I wanted to do some historic fiction again. So out on March 12th, paperback original, is An American Princess and it's about Alice Roosevelt. So it's by Stephanie Thornton. This is in the same vein as A Well-Behaved Woman, which I loved. Well-Behaved Woman was about the Vanderbilt family. So I think this is going to be an interesting look at the Roosevelts. Comes out March 12th, out in paperback. It's called An American Princess. Another one I wanted to talk about that I almost didn't. In fact, I'm going to be honest, I don't even know if we have copies of this in stock. This comes out today. This is not the final cover. I don't think it is. It's called The Elephant in the Room. I was going to skip this. I think the cover is lame. And I just thought, I don't know if I want to read this. Well, 2 nights ago, I was just reading, I get like an email with different links of things worth reading, and one person linked to this article in The Atlantic, and it was about being fat in America. And I thought, that sounds interesting. So I clicked over, and I read the whole thing. Absolutely heartbroken, intrigued, just flabbergasted, and I get to the bottom, and I see, this is a fairly recognizable title, and I see that he has written a book called The Elephant in the Room, and I was like, oh, well, I have that at the bookshelf. So I'm taking this home with me today, because his writing is so good. He's a journalist, which makes a lot of sense. I really like that style of writing. But he grew up in the South, grew up in North Carolina. He is now, I want to say in his 40s. He weighs 460 pounds. And he talks about not only what got him to that point, and it's really interesting, right? Like it's about Southern culture and the role food played and how his mom nurtured him through food. And then it's also about the loss of his sister, who also struggled with her weight. So I think that's kind of what's making him realize maybe I need to reevaluate. It's also about America and perhaps our desire to consume more. But I just love the writing style. The article was so compelling. So what I urge you to do is go Google Tommy Thompson. His article is in The Atlantic. If you like that, then I think you could try the book. The article is a long form read, so it's not like a quick, it's an essay that's pretty lengthy, like you would see in The Atlantic. But I loved it. He's written for Garden and Gun. They say this is kind of a combination of Roxane Gay's Hunger, but with kind of the writing style of Rick Bragg. And that's certainly the vibe I got from the article I read, from the essay I read. So it's called The Elephant in the Room by Tommy Tomlinson. I thought it was so good, and it just goes to show, like, I guess it's true, don't judge a book by its cover. And that one I just didn't think too much about it, and then I read that excerpt and was blown away. Another book that I'm really, and intrigued is the only word I know how to use, is called Unquiet. It comes out today. It is like a memoir in that the young woman who's writing it is writing about her Scandinavian filmmaker father. She is his youngest, and so he is in his 80s. And she kind of goes home to take care of him, and she records him. And they sit together, and they kind of know the end is coming, and so he wants to talk to her about aging. Because he's a filmmaker, he's a writer, and he wants to talk to her about what the aging process has been like for him. So she records him. 7 years later, she finds these tapes that she recorded. And I think at that point, her father has already passed. And so she's writing this book about kind of discovering these tapes and the truths found in them about growing older, about parenthood. He talks, I think it's a really good book about father-daughter relationships. But it's called Unquiet. Her name is Lynn Ullman, and that book comes out today. If you are familiar with Carl, I think his name is Oscar. He wrote Winter. He wrote like a set of 4 books, kind of all about a year in his life. And so there's one called Winter, one called Autumn. That's kind of what this reminds me of. It's very Scandinavian in style, if that makes sense. So kind of sparse prose. But I'm intrigued by it because I think it's not just about her going alongside Joy Enough, so about the loss of her father. I think it's also about the vulnerability of spoken word and kind of what she discovered when she refound these tapes. So picture finding your wedding tape, I think. You know what I mean? Picture finding your wedding video and kind of watching it again. So I think that's kind of the feelings this book is going to bring.
Who's the father? Is it Ingmar Bergman?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think yes. Yeah. Yeah, Live On. Yeah, so that is out today, and we do have copies. The next one I just wanted to mention because this is one that I kind of missed. I do not read a ton of poetry, but a couple of years ago, this kind of poetry book took indie bookstores particularly by storm. It was called There Are More Things Beautiful Than Beyonce, which is a great title. But it's by Morgan Parker, and then she's got a new collection of poetry out called Magical Negro. So if you are doing some of these reading challenges you see on the internet, a lot of people mention poetry, but then they don't tell you how to read poetry, and they don't tell you what poetry to read. So this is me giving you a suggestion of a poetry collection you could try. It would probably get you out of your comfort zone in multiple ways. But I think I'm at least intrigued enough to give it a shot, especially she had so much success with her first poetry collection. So I'm curious to see kind of what she has done with this one. Okay, this one sounds really good. It's called Sounds Like Titanic. It's out on February 12th. I thought this was stunning. I actually thought a lot about Kate, who used to work here. So the author of this book, her name is Jessica Hindman. She was a classical, I want to say violinist, and she got her master's degree. She moved to New York City and she auditioned and joined this ensemble that was going to travel the country. This is all true. It's a memoir. And she goes to the first, she makes it, she goes to the first kind of rehearsal or practice, and she realizes the whole thing is a sham. And the conductor of this kind of orchestra ensemble, he wants to see if people would notice when they attend these live music events if it's taped. And so these real musicians now are kind of caught in this man's experiment where they travel the country saying that they're playing like real music, like a real kind of orchestral presentation, but instead they're faking it while the CD is playing. And apparently they played, like her bio on the back of the book, it says that she has performed for PBS. Like they went all over the country, and how troubled she was as a musician to see people be deeply moved at these performances, and she knew it wasn't real. The whole thing was a farce. And so it's a memoir, I'm dying to read it. It sounds so weird. And it's called Sounds Like Titanic because they went to do these performances and she realized she thought it might be the soundtrack to Titanic. Like it sounded so much like the score of Titanic. And so it's kind of this, I'm not sure she ever names him. She refers to him as the conductor. But it was all just kind of his experiment, his purposeful. He wanted to see if people could be equally moved if the music were not actually live. But they thought it was live. I just can't, I'm blown away by such an odd idea. Anyway, she went on to get her MFA in creative writing. So I think you're going to find some, what I would call a literary memoir. So I think she's a creative writing instructor in Kentucky now. I'm very intrigued by that one. That comes out February 12th. Sounds Like Titanic. Okay, out on March 5th is a book called A Friend is a Gift You Give Yourself. And my publisher rep told me this is like Goodfellas meets Thelma and Louise. So I was like, okay, sold. That sounds interesting. I wanted to provide you with a diverse range of literature today, and I think this fits the bill. So if you like crime literature, or I thought about, as I was reading the description, it reminded me of The Widows, the movie that just came out with Viola Davis. So that's kind of the premise we're going for. Basically, these two women kind of join forces upon realizing, I think, their husbands' or partners' involvement with the mob. This is fiction, but apparently just a really good crime kind of noir kind of book. So Goodfellas meets Thelma and Louise kind of was what struck me. So A Friend is a Gift You Give Yourself. It comes out March 5th. Okay, another one that's out on March 5th that I want to talk to you about is Daisy Jones and the Six. The reason I want to talk to you about this is because Taylor Jenkins Reid is a writer who I really like, because I think she does a good job of writing light, fun, female lit. I hesitate to use the phrase chick lit, but she actually puts, I think, a lot of thought, and I think her novels are really well written. This is going to be a departure for her a little bit. It's called Daisy Jones and the Six, Think a Star is Born. So basically this young kind of musician living out in LA, her name is Daisy Jones. She is kind of floundering a little bit as a solo artist, but meets up with this band called The Six. And so it kind of follows what happens between her and the band leader. That's why I kind of feel like Star is Born vibes. Also, I think this should be on your radar because Reese Witherspoon has already raved about it. So if you're that person who kind of pays attention to Reese's picks, I think this is going to be one. Daisy Jones and the Six. And say what you will about Reese Witherspoon or Oprah or anybody else, other celebrities picking their books, I actually sometimes think they're doing a really good job. So I'm curious about Daisy Jones and the Six. I love this author. I trust her. And I'm excited.
6.
Yes, the number 6.
And who's author?
The author is Taylor Jenkins Reid. That one comes out March 5th. Daisy Jones and the 6th. Okay. So those are my quick kind of recommendations for you. I wanted to just walk you through some. So every luncheon we do, we give you one of these. These are called the Indie Next list, and what this is indie booksellers like us have kind of combined our tastes and sent in reviews. And I wanted to just show you these. I think it's safe for us to do this now. We're so proud because our shelf subscriptions, which is our monthly subscription service, everybody's shelf subscription made the Indie Next thing. So The Dreamers was my Indie Next pick. You already know why I love that book. The one right below it, The Water Cure, was Chris, the podcast co-host, Chris Jensen. This was his selection for the month. So our shelf subscription service, if you're not familiar, each of our staffers picks a favorite book of the month, and that's the one we kind of send out. We have over 150 subscribers across the country. If you like Chris's literature, that means what you are enjoying is literary fiction with kind of a weird speculative twist. So The Water Cure is, in Chris's words, hard R. So this is not a PG or PG-13 lit, but very much kind of about the end of the world, feminism. He really liked it, sent it out this month. So his selection was called The Water Cure. Another one I wanted to talk about, well, let me walk you through the shelf subscriptions first. At the very bottom of the middle column is the Paragon Hotel. This was Olivia's subscription selection this month. So if you're subscribed to Olivia, that means you generally like mysteries, suspense novels. This one happens to be a little bit of historic fiction. Paragon Hotel was written by Lindsay Fay, who wrote, gosh, it was a book about Jane Eyre, and I cannot remember it. Jane Steele, I believe was the name. So the Paragon Hotel. At the top third column, you have Mouthful of Birds. This was our selection from Kelsey. Kelsey loves short story collections and essays. This is supposed to be an excellent short story collection. Her novel, Fever Dream, received rave reviews, and so now this is her short story collection. I wanted to point out to you in the middle, kind of like right in the middle of your page, Sugar Run. So I started this book. The only reason I haven't finished it is I just am not sure it's for me. It's super dark Southern Gothic literature. So think The Winter's Bone, or Winter's Bone, if you're familiar with that story when it came out. Basically, a woman has committed a crime. She got sentenced to prison. It's supposed to be life in prison, but she gets paroled after 18 years. She gets out and she meets a woman who may or may not be good for her, and then they travel through Appalachia. The setting is stunning. Like, the writing is really good. It's just really dark, and I don't know if I just was not in the headspace for it, but it is getting a lot of rave reviews from the publisher and from other indie bookstores. I've seen a couple of bookstores I really like and respect have raved about this book. Avid Bookshop in Athens, and then another bookstore in the Northeast. So Sugar Run might be worth your time if that's your genre. Okay, another one I wanted to talk about, and Suzanne, you kind of mentioned this one too. The fourth one in the first column, maybe fifth, I'm sorry, called Inheritance by Dani Shapiro. I love Dani Shapiro. She has written a book, a memoir I really liked. I think it was called Still Life, or maybe it's called Still Writing. It is fantastic if you or someone in your life has aspirations for writing or loves to write. I love that book, highly recommend. But she's written a new book called Inheritance. This is one, again, that I think is going to get a lot of buzz because of who Dani Shapiro is. She already has some clout to back her up, but also because the story is so interesting. So Dani Shapiro does an Ancestry.com kind of thing where she sends in her information, and she finds out the true identity of her birth parents who had a closed adoption. And so what role does Ancestry.com, what role should they be playing in outing these parents who really wanted a closed adoption from the beginning? So she finds out who her parents are and kind of writes a lot about identity, belonging, and family. Suzanne mentioned there's a great interview with her in Parnassus in their kind of weekly email newsletter, so you might want to check that out too. I believe they have those available on their blog. But if you are interested in it at all, I just think that sounds really fascinating, and you can trust Dani Shapiro. She writes so well. Okay, I think those are the ones I wanted to talk about on this list. Yeah, out in paperback this month is The Afterlives. I'm just mentioning that because that was one of Chris's favorite books he read last year. And so that's out in paperback, as is Tangerine. Okay, the last thing we give you is Book Page. This is a great tool if you love author interviews, if you are in a book club. This is a great resource both for picking your next book club book, but also for like being the extra nerdy, super on top of the book club member who like takes this to book club and it's like, guys, I read this interview and I know all about this author and why they wrote this book. So you're welcome. You'll be the star of your next book club. I like Book Page because I love the format. It's kind of blurbs, lots of blurbs about different books. I think it's super interesting. So one of their top picks for book clubs is The Power. I read The Power. I have thoughts about it. And maybe that's why it's a book club selection recommendation, because you will not be able to finish this book and not talk about it with someone. That's on page 9. It wasn't my favorite book I ever read. Like I said, I had feelings. But sometimes those are the best book club books. Books that leave you with either questions or some issues. I think you might at least look into that one. There's an interview with the author of Paragon Hotel. So that book that was Olivia's shelf-subscription pick this month. So if you've read it, if you've read the book, then it might be fun to read the interview with the author. Let's see if there's the interview. There's another interview with Danny Shapiro. So you might want to mark that one as well. It's on page 16. Okay. Hey, let's see. I think those are some of mine. That's about it. I do like, if you like, what is the word I would use? Kind of weird. So it might kind of fall into personal growth, but it's more like somebody who decides to do a weird thing. So think about the Happiness Project and Gretchen Rubin. Like before she became a guru of happiness and self-help, she was just a woman trying to do this happiness project every day, right? So AJ Jacobs, to me, does the same thing. He wrote a book years ago that I adored called The Year of Living Biblically. I thought it was hilarious, where he tried to actually live by the rules set in the Bible. If you haven't read the Bible, that's impossible. And also very funny and not at all applicable to today. And so I thought that was really good. He has since done several books like that. He wrote a book, kind of, if I'm not mistaken, it was about either trying to break a world record or about what it's like to be a World Guinness Book record breaker. He has a new book out. It's called Thanks 1,000. And so he said this time, he just is somebody who like sets these weird goals for himself. This one was to thank everyone involved in producing his morning cup of coffee. So not just the waiters and the baristas, but like he went on an expedition to find out who brewed his coffee and how to make them. So I just think he is hilarious and just like deep dive. This is a guy who knows how to do his research. So it is called Thanks 1,000. He is on page 25. If that, I just think that sounds super interesting and totally yes. Okay. So that is kind of my overview. This is designed to get you through March. So we do these quarterly. So in March, we'll do another one kind of setting you up for spring and early summer reading. Then we'll do one in the dog days of summer, kind of talking about how to help you survive South Georgia summers. And then we'll do another one the following winter. So we kind of try to do these 4 times a year. So the next one will be on March 5th, 19th, thank you. I put it on the bottom of your thing. The bottom of your sheet you're taking. So March 19th, we'll do another one of these. But do you have any questions, or is there a book you've heard about but I didn't talk about it? Is there anything you thought I mentioned but you didn't catch the name? Anything at all that I can help? Any bookish problem I can solve for you today? Talk about the time. Oh, I did. Thank you, Suzanne. Okay, this comes out January 22nd. Olivia's reading this right now, so you'll really have to ask her for details. But the reason I picked it is because Tim Johnston, his first book is called Descent. It was so good. And this is, he publishes with Algonquin, which is kind of a smaller press, and so I feel like it doesn't always get the attention it deserves. So Descent was this really good kind of suspense novel. It wasn't a thriller, it was more suspense about a family who takes its vacation to the mountains and their daughter goes missing. So the current is his new book. If you like Dennis Lane, he is somebody who frequently blurbed for Tim Johnston. I am curious about this one because I love Descent so much. And Descent came out, I want to say 4 to 5 years ago. It came out a while ago. So that'd be a good one out in paperback as well. This comes out January 22nd. What else?
Told me about it. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't speak well at all, maybe that's why. But who is one of the two journalists who wrote about the Watergate? Woodward. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I've been trying to think about this the whole bunch. So Suzanne mentioned. And I know it's loud already, and it's good, but you have to read it.
Is it the which box? Is it Fear?
And I've heard left and right.
Okay, so I read it. I really thought it was not perfect, meaning I think they hurried up and got that thing published. But I do think it's incredibly well researched. I think he's a voice we can still legitimately trust, and there aren't most people, I feel like. I thought it was a really interesting look at the current administration, regardless of what side. I mean, I think the cover is designed to make you feel a certain way. But I think Bob Woodward approaches things still with a fairly even temperament, which is refreshing. And so I won't say I enjoyed it, but I appreciated it. And I think it's easy to read. So, like, if you are curious, you could probably pick that sucker up and be done pretty soon. It's not something you have to slog through. I did like it. I hesitate to say I enjoyed it, but I liked it. And I felt when I was finished, like, okay, I think I know how I think about something. Like, I think it helped me do some research. It helped me ask some questions, which I think is what literature books are supposed to do. So that's my little review. I do think it's worth your time. I had a couple of people who were like, oh, that's just more of the same. But I think because of who wrote it, I feel a little differently. I felt like I was reading something, even though I do think probably a publisher forced him to finish at a certain time. I do think he thanks at the very beginning, not even at the end. At the very beginning, he thanks his assistant, who has been with him forever. And I think they really researched this. And even though maybe the organization of the book is less than stellar, that to me was what was a little distracting. It felt piecemeal together, but the prose and the research, I think, are definitely there and worth your time.
Quick question. Sorry, I think you mentioned you were talking about An American Princess, a book about the Vanderbilt family.
Well-Behaved Woman by Teresa Fowler.
I really love that. That's what it's called?
Yes, Well-Behaved Woman. Yes,
Yes.
I really liked it. I don't even normally love a ton of historic fiction, but Teresa Fowler wrote Z, which was about Zelda Fitzgerald, and I loved it. And then I really liked Well-Behaved Woman, which is about Alma Vanderbilt. And it's great if you've been to any of the. Jordan and I did our honeymoon in Newport, Rhode Island, and so I was able to picture those mansions. So if you have any touchstones there, then I think it'd be worth your time.
When I came in, you were reading your list.
Yes.
Where's that list? Where's the? I mean,
Which list?
book that's
Oh,
from your childhood.
Reading Challenge.
Reading
Yes,
challenge.
it is available on our Instagram, but I am going to be sending it out in our weekly newsletter this week because it's a graphic. It's not something I printed. We might print it because people might wind up asking for it. But I feel like there's so many reading challenges out there. I just wanted one that was like quick and easy and that helps spark your reading if you got stuck this year. But it is available on our Instagram, and then I'm going to send it out in the Bookshelf's weekly email this week.
You know, you were saying, reading a book from your childhood.
Yes.
Or rereading, and I like moving horses.
Yes.
I had this one book that I loved, and it was not even in print anymore, but I found it like on eBay or something.
Yeah.
For like $5.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid to read it
Yeah.
because I don't want it to change.
Yeah. How you originally.
Yes, because I just love it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's called, and it's stupid. It's called Fron, the horse that knew no master. I mean, it's just like, but I just love it.
Yeah.
He was in like Central America and talking about snakes and being in swamps and he was a military horse.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I mean, it just was so real to me. And then I'm thinking, I don't want to read it.
Yeah, so here's the thing, so I think either you just find you another nonfiction book about horses. Yeah, because I do think like when I don't really want to go back, in my case, for example, and read the Dear America Anastasia Diary. Because I know I loved that book when I was 10, and I don't need to read it. But maybe I'll read the book called The Runoff Family. So that's one way to play that. Or, I mean, if you can, like for Christmas, I gifted, my mother-in-law is not a huge reader, which is difficult. But she's not a huge reader, but over summer, she casually mentioned like this book that she loved as a kid called Deirdre. And that it was like this medieval castle story. Anyway, I found it out of print and I gifted it to her for Christmas. And she was like, oh, and she was so excited, but I think she feels like you do, like not sure she wants to revisit it. I think there are some books that stay where they stay. So I think about the American Girl books for me, or what led me to reading. Until I have my own kids, I'm probably not going to revisit those. Whereas an old-fashioned girl, I still pick up every now and then. And it is cheesy, like of Louisa May Alcott's books, it is cheesy. Like I started reading it again this Christmas, and super, you know, like do-gooder book. But I remember how much it meant to me as a kid, and it still holds that magic. I really do believe, even if you go back and revisit Frog, I think the magical still holds, because I don't think revisiting something can change the way we feel. Like I think that even the movies that you like, maybe we're in a different era. Like I think especially now I'm rewatching some movies I liked. I'm like, oh, that seems problematic. Well, maybe it is problematic, but it's still, you can't change how you felt when you first read it. So I'm not saying you have to read it, but I am saying I think the books we love can handle our scrutiny. I do. I think they can. But yeah, I think that's what I wanted, that childhood obsession. It's what I want. I want us to think about who we were as kids. I mean, I was like, okay. And I love the Romanovs. I love the Olympics. Like, I just think of all these different obsessions I had. And so, like, what books could we be reading that would give us an adult perspective on those things we loved as a kid? All right, anything else before I leave, or you leave? I will stay there. But I did want to tell you, today you do get 10% off from any of your purchases in store, whether or not I talked about the book. And Olivia was amazing and printed off a pre-order form. So if you want to order one of the books that's on your main card, you can fill out the order form and hand it to Olivia, and she'll check it out super painlessly. Pre-orders are really important, not just for bookstores, but for authors. They help publishers see whose book is getting a lot of attention. So that's why you hear authors talk all the time, pre-order my book, like that's why. Which I will mention, the book that I'm going to pre-order is called The Home Edit. I don't know if you follow these women. I sent them a message. I was like, please come to Thomasville. I'm sure so message them and tell them. But The Home Edit is coming out with a book in March, and they are asking for pre-orders. It is great. Let's think. Marie Kondo, cozy minimalist, home and garden, beautiful kind of coffee table book that I think will be really fun. So that's
when they say you can keep books.
Yes.
I love books.
Yes. So we're allowed to keep them in there. But thank you guys for coming to our lunch today. I so appreciate it. If you have any follow-up questions or anything, please let us know. Hi.